Den Herrn neben mir kennt ihr alle. Ich hoffe, ihr habt gut ausgeschlafen. Sonst könnte es gefährlich werden. Das ist einer der Superstars des Horrorgenres, Robert Englund.
Danke. I just wanted to tell the fans that I have two new dark films. I don't know if they qualify as classic horror, but one of them stars Malcolm McDowell and the great John Glover, who was on Smallville with John Schneider, who's here at the show. And John's a great actor, and he plays a kind of strange Tim Burton doll maker. And it's in the tradition of the great 70s English horror movies, like Asylum, that have different segments or chapters to them. And that's the one I'm in with John Glover. But Lou Diamond Phillips is also in it, and Malcolm McDowell, as I said. It's called Sanitarium, and it just had its premiere in Miami. You can see the trailer, the preview, on the internet if you look up Sanitarium and go to that site, but check it out. And then I just finished another movie called Cantemir, which is kind of, it's a little bit Twilight, you know, in style. So those are my new projects, but let's do some Q&A. Anybody have any questions, anything at all? I'm an open book. Ask me anything. Nobody? Nobody wants to know anything? Any gossip? Yes, sir. What do I do when I'm free time? Well, I live south of Los Angeles in Laguna Beach. And so I do a lot of boogie boarding, you know, that's the body boards. I'm an old surfer, and so I love doing that, and it's actually better exercise because you use your legs too. And I walk the dog on the beach and work in the garden. But I love I'm really addicted to the new cable television shows in America and abroad. They're great new stuff being done on, like Game of Thrones, and the great imports from here, The Killing from Scandinavia that we have, Boardwalk Empire by Martin Scorsese. So I'm watching more cable television than I ever have before because it's so great right now. Comedy, horror, you know, The Walking Dead, obviously, but lots of good stuff like that I like. And I'm developing some projects, working on a script with some friends and helping some friends finance movies. I'm hoping to do the sequel to Behind the Mask, because I'm very proud of that. I think it's a good film. Anybody else? Any more questions? Anything anybody wants to know about any of the Nightmare films or any of the other horror movies or anything I've been up to? I've got yes, Olaf.
Shooting the movies to the Nightmare movies.
How was it? Well, you know, some of the Nightmare movies have blended in my memory together. And it's kind of easy to blend part 3 and 4. Dream Warriors and Freddy's Revenge, because they had an overlapping cast. But it was a great, happy accident that I came into the world of horror and science fiction at the same time with V and the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And what that did for me is it opened doors abroad. It opened doors in Europe for me to work, because horror movies, fantasy films, science fiction speak the international language of film. And they travel, they translate much better as cinema to the world audience, to the European audience, to the South American audience, even the Asian audience. So V and Nightmare on Elm Street together enabled me to travel and work abroad. So not only do I work in Hollywood, but I've worked in Canada, Mexico, Russia, Africa. I've worked in Spain, I've worked in Italy, you know, I've worked in England. And this is a great bonus, a great plus for an actor's career to be able to do that. And I love it. And as you get older, it's really fun to travel to Montreal or to Johannesburg, somewhere exotic and fun, and make a movie. As well as, you know, the normal regular work of me, you know, doing an episode of Criminal Minds, or doing an episode of Hawaii Five-0, or doing an episode of Bones at 20th Century Fox, which is just my normal, you know, Robert Englund guest star on TV work. But it's really fun when I get to go off and kill some beautiful young girl in a castle in Spain. And I would never have been able to do that if fans like you hadn't embraced my work back in the early 80s with V and the original Nightmare on Elm Street, because that opened the doors for me to be an international actor, and I love it. Like when I leave here tonight or tomorrow, we're gonna sneak off and I'm gonna explore Dusseldorf all day tomorrow and Tuesday, and then we're taking a slow train all through Germany, and then transferring, you know, to meet my wife's family in Italy. But you know, we love it. Last time we were in Hamburg, you know, we did the whole, I think you call it the fairy tale road, along the Weisse River, all along the Weisse River, through Hamelin and the little village of Baron Munchausen, and some of the little towns for the Brothers Grimm. And you know, I know it sounds like a tourist, but for an American, but it was so beautiful. You know, that drive, and we saw such wonderful things. So next time I think I'm going to do the Black Forest. Any more questions, anybody, about anything at all? Have you guys seen, just curious, what is the most recent horror movie that is sort of a unanimous success? Has Jack the Giant Slayer, is it in Germany? I haven't seen that yet, but I hear if you see it in 3D, IMAX, it's not out, just the trailer? It's out. She says it's out, yeah. I've heard very good things about that film. I haven't seen it, but the one I saw most recently that I liked was, I like Cabin in the Woods, the Joss Whedon film. Huh? Boy, and I love Richard Jenkins in it, and Bradley Whitfield, and I love it was so original. And the creatures were original too. So the other, is there a new German horror film that I don't know about?
Not any that you should know.
Not any that I should know, because, you know, I love the Swedish Let the Right One In. Oh, I just thought it was great. And by the way, I'm going to tell you something. I highly, highly recommend this. And I know there's a good German translation. The English translation for the novel, Let the Right One In, is brilliant, and it's much darker and much more violent than the film, because in the classic vampire tradition, in the book, Let the Right One In, the character that's the old man that takes care of the vampire, the little girl, in the book, he's like a serial killer. He's a pedophile, he's like Freddy. And he's like Renfield in Dracula. He's like the Renfield character in Dracula. And in the novel, he is much more horrific. And he can't die because he's a vampire. And there's an incredible sequence where he attacks the girl at the end, and he's wounded. And he goes and heals in the snow in Sweden. He literally lives in a hollowed out tree. in the snow, in the forest, near the condominium apartments. It's really amazing. So I really recommend and I'm sure it's translated in the German, the novel of Let the Right One In. It's really great, you guys. It's like a very violent, very dark, great Stephen King. Very good reading. Any questions? You're so shy Sunday morning. Yes? Come up and ask. We can all hear. By the way, you have a great t-shirt.
Hi, did you ever get strange requests from people who ask you to appear on their wedding or at parties as Freddy Krueger?
You know, I do get strange requests, but my strangest fans are not Nightmare on Elm Street fans. My strangest fans were the V fans, because the science fiction fans are very possessive and very obsessive of their shows, whether it's Buffy the Vampire Killer or whether it's V or Star Trek fans. And I had a girl who looked like me, and she had a curly perm, the perm hair from remember the 70s, perms, disco afro, and she strapped down her little boobies, and she used to dress like my character on V. And I would see her at the big science fiction conventions in the United States. Very smart, very talented girl, but very obsessed. And she was always writing new plots for visitors. And I finally convinced her to become a writer, you know, and quit impersonating me. But that was my only strange one. You know, I've done a lot of, there's been a couple of Freddy weddings, you know, couple of Freddy honeymoons that I was invited on but didn't go. And I have a gallery on my website for the Freddy tattoos. But I saw as far back as the 80s, I saw some really amazing Freddy tattoos, and I've seen and the best one I saw recently, I think it was in Sweden, but it might have been in the US. There's a guy doing tattoos that look like old-fashioned black and white photos of Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney. And he had on one arm, one whole arm, was Phantom of the Opera, Lon Chaney, Karloff as Frankenstein, Lugosi as Dracula, the Wolfman, and they were like vintage, retro, soft focus, black and white on one arm. And then on the other arm, he had Doug Bradley, Pinhead, he had Michael Myers, Jason, Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, all done in Technicolor and very bright. And it was just the most amazing homage to horror I've ever seen. But I also saw a guy with a full torso, Japanese mafia, Yakuza tattoo in the Japanese style of Freddy and Jason. Me and Ken, who's right over there, we were wrestling like sumo wrestlers, and it was done in the Japanese style. And it was his whole back and front and top of his thighs and went onto his upper arms. It was an amazing tattoo. But the colors and the style was all kind of that Japanese style, you know, that's very stylized. It was great. So I guess those are about the strangest things I've seen. What I love about coming here, on this show here, this weekend, I've seen unbelievably rare soundtracks, small soundtracks, advanced publicity soundtracks for some of the Nightmare movies using the Goo Goo Dolls, almost in a vinyl, early release Goo Goo Dolls, an early Dokken release. Some of the rock and roll from parts 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the soundtracks, which was very ahead of its time. But the packaging the photos on these publicity soundtracks, some photos I've never seen before. I just saw one this morning on a limited edition German Laserdisc re-release of Nightmare, of Johnny Depp sitting topless, getting the blood put on for the bed that eats Johnny Depp in part one. But I saw photos I've never seen before. Yeah, there's a photo of me on the ceiling getting direction from Wes Craven in the revolving room. Just amazing stuff. A photo of me and one of the bands, early bands, SOD, Stormtroopers of Death, who became Anthrax, who became Metallica. That's the family tree of rock and roll. And his pictures of all of us hanging out. They kidnapped me one night in New York. And they took me into New Jersey to a little tiny club to see a band, and it was the Ramones. 1982, 83, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm again. So, Robert, you told me yesterday that Wes Craven's Nightmare is your favorite one, but I would like to know which one is your favorite from the Elm Street series, because Wes Craven's Nightmare isn't Nightmare on Elm Street Part 7, I think. It's a special one. It's a kind of crossover, maybe. And second question, did you see the remake, and what do you think about it?
Well, I guess my favorite, if it's not Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I think it would be a double bill of 3 and 4 together. They play very well together. If you have a party and you've got a Blu-ray and you've got a nice flat screen, they look great together. They overlap. There's a lot of cross-referencing. Regarding the remake, you must all understand I'm a big fan of many of the actors and a friend of some of the actors in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. Clancy Brown and I do voiceover work together. You know Clancy, Highlander, and Carnival from HBO. Clancy's a terrific actor. And the boy in it, and I always forget his name, and I feel terrible. He starred with me this year on Criminal Minds. He looks like a young Dennis Hopper. When Dennis Hopper was very young and he was in movies with James Dean, like Giant or Rebel Without a Cause. He's also in, he's in the Jennifer's Body. He's the boy in Jennifer's Body, the punk rock boy in Jennifer's Body. And he also worked with me in a movie called Red with the original Hannibal Lecter, Brian Cox. His name is Galen. He's in the new Nightmare remake. Wonderful actor. I think Connie Britton from Friday Night Lights and the new television series Nashville. She's wonderful, playing the mother. And I like. I like Rooney Mara, although I think because they reshot the new Nightmare, the remake, they reshot a lot of it. They were very worried about it. In the opening, they put a new sequence in the opening. And I think what happens is when that movie starts, the kids are already so damaged and haunted by Freddy that you never get to know them when they're happy. So you don't invest yourself emotionally relating to them. So when Freddy starts knocking them off one at a time, you don't care as much. I also think they probably did the remake a little premature. What producers don't realize is that the genre audience, whether you're an action fan, whether you're a horror fan, whether you're a fantasy fan or a science fiction fan, we have access now to some of our favorite older movies that have been remixed and digitalized, and they've come out on Blu-ray and DVD and in box sets, and we can watch them now on really good equipment at home. And they hold up, they look great. You know, Nightmare 7, Wes Craven's New Nightmare looks great digitally, remastered Blu-ray on a flat screen. So that a new generation of fans has discovered the original films. They weren't ready to see a Nightmare remake yet. I think they should have waited a little longer to remake it. So that would be my criticism. I think as brilliant as the makeup is on Jackie, the new Freddy, as brilliant as it is, I think it's a little too real. And because he's melted from the burns, he's been robbed of a silhouette. He's been robbed of a profile. A lot of Freddy is done in shadow and silhouette, and it robs some strength of the shadow and the silhouette of Freddy because the makeup is very flat from the side, as if Freddy's face was melted from the flames. That's something that they probably only realized after they were into making the movie, because the makeup is great. The makeup on Jackie's, I like the makeup a lot, but I think that that's probably maybe something that they discovered too late. You know, Freddy lives in the imagination, in the subconscious of his victims. He dwells in the landscape of a nightmare, of a dream. He's not walking around in reality. So every time Freddy appears in the movie, he's a product, a result of somebody's imagination. So he's larger than life. He's existing in a surreal dream, nightmare landscape, which is exaggerated by the fear of that particular victim. So he has to be slightly larger than life. He lives in that world. He dwells in that world. That's what he thrives on. The paranoia and the subconscious of his victims. So to make him too real, he's not a serial killer walking around Dortmund, killing girls, you know, in an alley. He's in your head, killing.
Okay, eine letzte Sache noch. Robert hat es ja gerade schon gesagt, Nightmare mal im Kino gucken. Wer das mal machen will, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, in Wolfsburg am 13. April, ist ein Samstag. Horror Sneak Nach, der hat uns gestern eine Grußbotschaft gegeben. Also mal reingeschaut. Dankeschön.
No more questions? We're going out for beer now? Sunday, here.
Okay, I got one more.
You where?
Here.
Okay.
What's your worst nightmare you ever had?
Well, you know, I'm not sure if I remember the nightmares that have been my worst. Because I have, you know, we all wake up sometimes and it feels like somebody's sitting on your chest. Because when you're in deep REM sleep, I think part of your body is naturally paralyzed. Or that's that thing that goes along with the falling dream. You know, if you're falling in a dream and you actually hit, you can die of a heart attack. I don't like snakes. That's a real fear I have. But I did a movie called Python after Anaconda, and I had to work with a lot of snakes. And I worked with some snakes in the Nightmare movie, so I'm sort of over that fear. I don't like seeing police when I'm driving too fast in my rear view mirror. That's kind of an Alfred Hitchcock fear, I think. Kind of psycho Janet Leigh fear. You know, the original Nightmare was motivated by Wes Craven reading the newspaper about Vietnamese refugees and Vietnamese immigrants in the US. And they had moved with a religious group as their sponsor to the Midwest in America. And many of them, like the Balinese, had a tradition when they had a bad dream, they would wake themselves up and write it down, turn it into song lyrics for a song, music, paint it, paint the nightmare away, or turn it into a poem. And when they were in the US, these same refugees, sponsored by these well-meaning religious people in the Midwest of America, they were so disoriented by where they lived. It was so different. The weather was so different from the jungle and the humidity of where they came from that they were unable to wake up and write down their nightmares. And they were dying. This is all a true story. And there were articles in the newspaper about these people. And that was one of the original ideas, one of the original motivations for the Nightmare on Elm Street movie that Wes had read. I remember reading those articles too, before I knew Wes. So at least I don't have a nightmare that bad. At least I can wake up still. Will you all wake up? That is the question. Anyway, thanks for coming, okay? I'm going back to work. I think we're doing photos later. I brought the claw, so if you want me to cut you, I'm happy to do so.